Thank you to everybody who's put this together. I'm doing the easy part here and getting up and speaking, but I take a lot of inspiration from people like Terry and from Marty, from Betty who's in the crowd. There are a lot of people in this crowd who've been in politics a lot longer than I have, and they have really reached out to me. Ken, Marissa's been involved politically longer than I have too, and all of them have reached out to me to help mentor me and to welcome me into the fold. So I really appreciate the work that you've already done. I went to my first political meeting this year in February, first ever, and there have been a lot of people doing hard work in dark times since the early 2000s. It's been a little bit of a desert for Democrats for a while around here. But I'm hoping to make some changes first in the Democratic Party and hopefully for this nation if I can persuade all of you to get behind me. But I'm looking over here at this river and it's so incredibly beautiful. I feel like I should just be quiet and all of us should just look at the beauty around us. It reminds me a lot, my uncle, Troy Marcingill, he lives up in Toccoa on Currahee Mountain right now, and he used to take me up to his the area where he grew up, which is up in Raven County, and he taught me how to fish for trout. And it was just always so beautiful, and I've always really treasured scenes like this. It's good for humanity, and I want to keep it safe for the next generation, so that when they go to fish for trout, they can eat it, and they can actually enjoy nature. I don't want it sold off for profit, because some things are worth more than money. So I want to tell you a little bit about myself today. This is something I'm getting a little used to. I'd rather talk about ideas and plans, but people have wanted to hear where I'm from and why I decided to run. So let me tell you that. My mother worked on Currahee Mountain in Stevens County for almost 40 years at Milliken Humphrey. When she first started there, she worked swing shift, and some of my earliest memories are in a trailer with her figuring out childcare so that she could work those crazy hours. And eventually she worked long enough and she earned a steady shift, first shift, so that she could come home and take care of us kids. She did that for almost 40 years, and she was so selfless. The last person that she would ever go shopping for was for herself. She would always put her kids first. And one day I hope maybe if I keep trying, I'll be as selfless as my mother. My father drove 99 miles to work every day because I'm from Martin, Georgia. That's a tiny town between Toccoa and Livonia. There's a caution light there, and that's it. Very small town, a lot of cows, a lot of chicken houses. I spent some time around some of the cows and in some of those chicken houses. I worked a little bit on the side for cleaning up some of the trays in some of those chicken houses. And that's where I grew up. We kind of lived in the country. Most of my summers were spent with no shoes and no shirt. And it was a lot of fun with me and my brothers out in the country. My father, though, of course, couldn't find great work as a machinist anywhere nearby, so he would drive almost 100 miles to Marietta every day. For almost 20 years to work at Lockheed Martin as a machinist. And so I've always been proud of my parents and how much work they put into me and my future and my education. I was lucky enough to get a college education because of their hard work and because of their support. Now, I did grow up in a trailer for my first few years, and it took me a while to find out later on in life that there were people who referred to people like me as trailer trash. Of course, when you're poor, when you're young, you don't know about your status, and we weren't poor, we were working class, but you learn after a while how people see themselves in this hierarchy. But my father, even though he never got a chance to go to college, we kind of stumbled on to these strange experiences. He was a reader. He really loved to read, and we mostly just read cowboy books, but sometimes he would find these works of course, we didn't know this at the time, there was no internet, and we were in a very small town. He would come across these great literary masterpieces, and he would bring them home and we would all read them. One of them was a book that I now know how to pronounce. But back then, we were crazy about a book that we called Don Quixote. My father had found this book sitting in the workroom in Marietta, and he started reading it, and he couldn't stop laughing. And so he brought it home and told me a few of the stories, and he even used some of the lines from Don Quixote on my mom whenever they would get into an argument. My favorite line of his was when my mother would get really upset because he didn't help out with the chores as much as he maybe should have. He would look at her and he would say, "Thou understandest not the ways of knight errantry." And you know, that did not help my mother's mood when he would quote that line to her. So anyway, even though we may have had a working class background, we had our own ideas, and we sort of got educated in a roundabout way. That's my background. Eventually, I met the love of my life and my best friend, Jennifer McCall, just a few miles away, up at UNG, the Dahlonega campus. We were English majors together. We also worked on the newspaper together. And I did actually write a speech tonight, and I'd like to read it to you. But before I read it to you, I want you to know that if I have any ability at writing, and I do enjoy writing, if I do have the ability, I didn't get it all by myself. It couldn't have happened without all those years of hard work that my parents put into working very hard to raise me day in and day out. So I do want to read my speech to you tonight. I've thoughtfully prepared it, and I hope you get something out of it. But this is my vision, not just for the nation, but to start with, the Democratic Party. So first of all, I want to talk about the power in this crowd tonight. It is authentic and sincere. This is the kind of power that will transform our country. It is the only reason I chose to step out of private life and into the spotlight. Tonight, I want you to take a moment and realize how powerful you are. No matter how it might look some days, we are not yet under the power of the Kremlin. If we were in Russia, there would be armed guards arresting you and me, not just because we resist, but because our strength is the greatest threat to power in the history of the world. Kings and tyrants throughout time have feared the power of the people, and in most governments, that power is hemmed round by personal bodyguards or backed by secret police. In America, our Constitution was written to dethrone tyrants and to make our republic permanent. You have freedom of speech because your words fuel revolutions. You have the freedom to assemble because your fellowship is the crest of the wave of history. And you are making tyrants quake in their gilded towers today because they know that as long as we exercise our God-given rights, their power will always hang by a gossamer thread. Now is the time to find our power again. On some days, I no longer recognize my country. There are moments when the grim reality of the present is so disorienting that I have the distinct impression that I'm living in a dream or a weird parallel reality, where a person's word no longer counts for anything, and where virtue has become a temptation, and vice has become a virtue. Hatred is the new love, greed is the new charity, and lies are the new truth. We live in a time of constant revolution, a topsy-turvy world, but whatever happens, we are all spinning towards a common destiny. The banks want to drive drunk on the highways of commerce, and there is no longer a law against it. When they drive our economy into a ditch, and when Main Street is once again brought to its knees, Wall Street will do what they did the last time they wrecked the world. They will collect their reward from their government. So I understand why people are so upset all the time. Every day we wake up to new, sudden changes. For some communities, those changes have brought ruin, and the grim wasteland at the edges of their neighborhoods has eaten its way into their hearts. Across the world and here at home, the gruesome images of terrorism in the name of God and race have come to us at the speed of light. Racial discord has sprung up across our tattered land, leading some to place what little hope they have in a feeble strong man. But just because we are angry, we who live among the wreckage are not blind. We see how some have profited from the chaos and division that have ruined our factories and neighborhoods. We watched as the candidate of hope and change handed over our wealth to the very criminals who burned our economy to the ground. And when the smoke cleared, it was the bandits who walked off with a fistful of billions. In those days, if you only lost a few million on fraudulent loans, you were nobody. The more billions you lost, the greater your reward from the government. This is the source of the smoldering resentment felt all across this nation today. The hardest hit were the usual victims. Minorities, especially African Americans, suffered one of their biggest setbacks since Jim Crow in the Great Recession. Our wealth is not in our workers' hands, and it is not in our farmers' fields. The wealth of this nation has been stashed in offshore tax havens, sent off on vacation till election season, when companies who gripe about investing in education and roads suddenly locate the cash they need to buy their hand-picked puppets in government. No party is innocent of corruption. Our elections have become cash wars, so that now a candidate is prized more for how much he has raised than the ideas she has to fix our broken system. The results are clear as daylight. Republican politicians have become fanatical oligarchs, and there is hardly a progressive party left worthy of the name. In votes that spell profits for the few and poverty for the many, the GOP gets a unified yes, and the Democrats have just enough traitors crossing over to get the vote passed, and just enough no votes to help us feel better about ourselves. I can't help what the Republicans do. I can't change the fact that Donald Trump won the last election, the last electoral college victory. And I can't blame him for winning. After all, he tried his best to lose. What I can do is bring long-needed change to the Democratic Party. My plan is revolutionary, but it is not new. I believe that we must love our neighbors. This is a commandment not only in my Christian faith, but in all the great faiths of the world. It is also a principle shared by many of my friends who are not of any faith. I believe that we must restore faith in our elected officials. We rely on mutual goodwill in our families and businesses, and if our government is to function again, we must apply those same principles to Congress. I believe if our government is to succeed, then it must be a government of the people, for the people, and by the people. I do not want government too big, where there are officials raiding schools and factories to check people's papers. But I do want a government that is able to keep up with the ambitions and needs of its people. These are our ambitions. Each of them springs from our common needs. Each of them unites us, no matter our ideology or party. First, we must fix our broken healthcare system. Nobody should die because they're poor, and nobody should be poor because they're dying. With an American health insurance plan, also known as single payer, we could put every working American into one pool and take our money straight to our healthcare providers without having to go through private for-profit health insurance companies. There should only be one set of people profiting from healthcare, and that is caregivers. Right now, doctors' offices spend 38% of their budget on administrative costs because private health insurance companies make it as hard as possible for healthcare providers to be paid for their work. With only one payer, the American people, we could not only remove the nightmare bureaucracy of thousands of health insurance plans, but we could also keep rural hospitals open for business and broker fair deals with pharmaceutical companies. The 9th District has one of the highest rates of uninsured people in the state, and our state has the 5th highest rate of uninsured people in the nation. An American health insurance plan would help everybody, no matter their status or wealth, to live the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Second, we must protect our water and air and be good stewards of our environment. We can't buy a new earth, and we can't pay for clean air, but we can have an effective government that keeps our homeland from becoming a blanket of smog and pollution. We see the effects of erasing rules for businesses in Beijing, where their citizens have to wear masks to breathe the air, and where many die each year from complications caused by pollution. I'm going to put my paper down now. I do want to finish up my speech, and I want to tell you about my platform in a systematic way, but I'll stop reading to you now. So my platform is there for a reason. Number one, I want us to stop reacting so much to Donald Trump. I believe that if we focus on him so much and every single lie that he tells and every single crime that he commits, if we only react to him and don't act to build our own party, I believe that we're going to keep losing. He uses people like you and me, when we focus on him too much, as a propaganda tool. So what I have encouraged people to do is to institute a new principle in their own lives. And I started it with myself to keep myself sane a few months ago. For every one time I complain or criticize Donald Trump, I do 5 things that are positive and productive to help build the Democratic opposition to Donald Trump. That's what's going to win us an election in 2018. I'm tired of Democrats being afraid of their own values. I'm tired of Democrats who come out and listen to consultants and say the safe thing because they're worried about upsetting people with their own beliefs. But our values are stronger. Our convictions are based on wisdom and truth. We should not be afraid of our progressive values. So another plank in my platform, after healthcare and after the environment, also includes a livable wage for every worker in this country. Because when you deprive a worker of a decent wage, you're not just taking money from that person. People who work for an hourly wage are not just giving their labor or their talents. They are giving hours of their life, which is all they have to give, because they don't have billions stashed in an account overseas. All they have are their working hours, their waking hours to devote to producing things with their hands. So it is not only good for our society, it is the right thing to do to pay people a livable wage. We should not be living in a nation where the biggest employer in the world, Walmart, has instructions in their workroom on how to apply for food stamps. We are subsidizing the richest people in the history of the world through taxpayer money, and we call it charity. That is not charity, that is extortion. Nobody who's working a full-time job should make so little that they qualify for food stamps. But because we're progressives, we also like to study things like facts and statistics. We also like to make sure that our policies won't hurt the economy. So here's my proposal. I want to shift the tax burden away from businesses who actually employ Americans. And I do not want to give a blanket tax cut to people who work for reality shows to hire an extra butler. I do want to reward companies who hire American workers and pay livable wages by shifting some of their tax burden from their payroll tax onto Wall Street. Because those people benefit from our society. They do a good thing. We need Wall Street. We need stocks and bonds, and we need financial institutions. But they also need our society. They benefit from being a part of our society. And they should reinvest in that society they benefit from. So they need to start paying their fair share into our schools, into our roads, and into our public safety, which they profit from. And I don't want to stop there. I want to reassert some of our values as Democrats. Now I know that there is an evil lie that people like to tell about Democrats. And I'm ready for somebody to call me this. But they call us, these fine people sitting in this crowd right now, they like to call us baby killers. They like to say, our opponents like to say that we are not pro-life. But did you know that I've never met a single person who, when you sit down and talk to them, is not pro-life? In fact, if you want to hear a nice pro-life idea, what about ensuring healthcare access to every single American, regardless of their wealth? We are the pro-life party. But we believe in preserving the dignity of every single life, including women who happen to be pregnant.